So this is follow-up from that. At that meeting, I said we should do this on a somewhat of a schedule or a basis. And then summertime, things are slow, but school's back in session. Things are moving along. We're into almost the end of October, middle October. So we're into school 2 months nearly. And so it's probably a good time to get together. People are definitely interested, and we've had some meetings, we've had some action. So I thought I would put myself back out there for my constituency and anyone else in the community who's interested in asking me questions, giving me their feelings, or listening to what I have to say. But I don't have a whole lot to say. I said a lot last night. And it was in a marathon meeting. Our meeting actually began at 6, and I think I got home at 11:45. And so that was a long undertaking, and we actually didn't get everything done. But we got a lot of things done. And there were some very good things. And I think as the constituency of Zone 4, I'm very proud of the fact that we had a really great presentation from Hemingway School and their initiative or their idea to expand the curriculum delivery of this school and take it instead of K through 6, K through 8, with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And so we put that to a vote. The board said that we should allow the school to explore that even farther and come back with some type of more formal proposal, with the impetus being that that curriculum begin with an institution of the 6th grade in the year 2017-18, which would be the upcoming school year. And in their presentation, it was very clear that that was a very doable and achievable goal, because the school infrastructure would facilitate that movement into a 6th grade year. So that's what we asked. It doesn't have to happen, but I'm excited for that. My rationale or belief in that, I actually made the motion for it, was that the data from the school and from the surveys the school had provided was pretty favorable to that. And the fact that the school population here is flat, if not decreasing to some degree. Wood River Middle School is becoming a bit overburdened as far as their infrastructure. If there was a way to utilize the district facility to a more even level and have parity in usage rather than have to build something new somewhere else. Eventually there'll have to be some construction that goes into that project to sustain labs and so on and so forth, but I think those are modifications and improvements over existing structure versus building something totally new or new additions or things like that. There may be some addition, but the space will be able to take it. And the scaling of the plan that was presented was very good, because it was a grade year at a time as the kids matriculated into each grade, was, I thought, really pretty well thought out and good use of the school. And then ultimately the best part of it is the educational component, which is something that I think people would like to see, society in general and in the educational landscape of the nation. There is a strong cry for education in science, in technology, engineering and math. If you're going to get an engineering job, electrical engineering, computer science, computer programming, understanding all of those types of things in the scientific realm, or the technological realm, or the engineering realm, are going to provide good jobs and good opportunities for kids in the future. And if we can prepare our kids here to succeed or outperform their peers, I think that's a great thing for us to do. So I'll just start with that. There's my little speech on what we did last night. And I'll just open it up. I don't want this to be like me preaching at you. I would much rather hear from all of you and answer your questions, your concerns. You know, if anybody says hurrah, that would be great too. So be nice. And by the way, this is Brian Fletcher. He's our new business manager. He came on this year, so everybody has a chance to meet him. It was nice of him to offer to come. Gwen Carroll, our superintendent, is here. And they came just as informal friends of me to this event. This is my deal. This is nothing to do with the administration or anything like that. This is me speaking to all of you and you speaking to me. So there you go. That was a long introduction, but I'll open it up to the floor. And thank you again for coming.
Well, I'd be happy to start. I have a question for Dr. Holm. It seems that you set a new precedent at the board meetings by sitting up with the trustees at the front of the meetings. I was wondering how that decision was generated.
That's where I was asked to sit at my first meeting. I assume it's because of the chair, vice chair, and superintendent working closely together is the expectation. But that's where I was asked to sit.
By whom?
When I went to the first board meeting, that's where the name tags were.
I can offer some background just because I think I have some.
There must be some tradition there.
Yeah, so the, of
No.
course, you remember the board meetings were at the district office and it was a pretty crowded space. And so I think they were constantly working through the best seating arrangements.
Right.
But I think the superintendent was always meant to sit with the board, and then when we expanded to the rest of that bigger boardroom, that is the way that the seating occurred. So.
Gosh, Heather, can I even go back further?
Yeah,
Because when
go
I was
back
on the
further.
board, because that's an interesting question, because I've actually wondered, because never before has the superintendent sat in there. The superintendent always sat where she or he, or he was available to answer questions or clarifications or something like that, but actually never ever did sit in with the board. It was like, I think it was pretty clear that there was a distinction between the board and the
Yeah,
superintendent.
right.
So I
And I
think that-
never even thought it was unusual, because every
Yeah.
place I've ever worked, that's
Yeah.
the setup.
All right.
You do see it occasionally, but never, we never ever had that here before. Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah, and I
That's
think,
always
there's probably a good reason for it. But anyway, it's irrelevant. I mean, both things, like, seems cordial, but also it shows that
It's helpful.
distinction. Well, except that it should be a discussion among the board. And if it needs clarification or something, then a reference to the superintendent, but the superintendent not being like that active participant in that. This is a very distinct role that the board plays from the superintendent. I think that's a pretty good question.
Well, I certainly appreciate Gwen Carroll's reserve in her role in her seat at the table. Yeah, she's very reserved, and she's
I'm not.
very much like,
Please, I'm not
yeah,
saying.
but I'm just
she's
saying, like,
letting me
as
do that.
as a member of the board, I actually never even thought of it. It's like,
I know,
I view her as a resource when there's something I don't know.
and I
or
think
there's
that
some-
we
you
always
know.
did, but just separate,
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
in a separate.
something to think about, for sure.
Just curious, yeah.
I think it's all she did. Obviously, I'm going to say probably it's all I know, because it's always been done since I was involved. And I think as she's been involved too. Interesting.
And it was always different before,
Huh.
right?
Well, I
Never,
just
I
think
mean,
that
Lonnie
was
wasn't
such a-
sitting up there,
Okay.
It was,
and
It was such a small space. I'm not, remember we just kept trying different configurations of where everyone sat, so.
it's
I
true,
don't know.
but it's also true that that space never resulted in that configuration.
I'm sorry, are you saying that the superintendent didn't sit with the board until Gwen Carroll's
I
has
never
come?
have seen that before, yeah,
That's
and
right.
not in this district. I mean, I didn't never, Lonnie and Jim Lewis did not sit up there, they had a different position now, and Heather's explaining that in one vein, but I do think it changed the dynamic a little bit.
Well, just as an outsider, I'm just here to kind of listen. I might have some input at some point, but maybe that should be addressed. It's obviously an issue. I just think it's kind of on the table as it's different. It might be posing an issue, so maybe that should be addressed either, maybe, I don't know, just change it. Is it that complicated?
No, I made a note
I
of
don't
that. I
know.
got
You know, it just sounds like there's obviously several people in the room that have noticed, they have history, it's an issue. So maybe it shouldn't be an issue, because that seems like a really easy fix. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there right now that's challenging. I think the board is definitely, one of the reasons I'm here to listen is that there is a lot of, in the paper and what's going on, and there's a lot of issue going on. That seems like, if it's a problem for the constituents and the people that are there and the people that are listening, then maybe we need to think about changing that. Back to,
Rob,
I agree.
Yeah.
just so you know, the objections to that seating arrangement are widespread. Just simply because it implies too much, what was the word used last night? Coziness. That the board should function as one entity, the employees as another. We have various different employees in the front row, always available for consultation, advisory positions, whatever, always available, right there, part of the meeting, but not by sight or implication part of the board. And I hear it a lot. Okay?
Okay,
It's the first time I've heard it.
me too. So thank you for sharing. And it is, that's a very simple resolve. I
Yeah, I mean, so I
don't
guess
need
it's-
to beat this one up anymore.
Yeah, okay.
That brings me to maybe another point I can throw out there for all of you. So say we do reconfigure and we go to just board members there, we have an empty hole, right? And this hole is really significant. And that's something that I think we need to discuss. I would love to get some feedback from you on how that process moves forward. It was interesting to me last night that actually, I think we have 3 people whose names, at least from the group who presented to us in the first round of the vacancy filling, 2 of those people were actually sat through the entire meeting last night. I was really impressed with the fact that they were willing to sit there. I saw Irene Healy and I saw Ellen Mandeville. Both of them were actually in the meeting for the entire time. I viewed that as pretty good discipline on their part and interest in what they're getting involved in. I thought that was quite good.
I think just one little thing about that. I also was sitting in that long meeting last night.
Me too.
I was also in that
Yeah,
long
but I
meeting.
mean, as candidates.
But I'm not a candidate. No, I'm not saying that.
As
But-
people who are actually
Yeah.
in the process, I
Right.
thought that was,
But I also
Of
know
great
a lot
value.
of people were watching online last night because I heard from people this morning, hey, I watched that last night. Were you actually there? Did you actually stay the whole time? And I didn't actually stay the whole time. I left right before the end, but I just had to get home to my kids. But I think it's really important to note that online is helpful because it allows a lot of people in our community, potential candidates, lots of people, to watch it. So the people in the audience is definitely nice, but it's important to remember there's a lot of people out there watching online.
Yeah, I hope you weren't implying that the other 2 people who weren't there, who had put their names in, have less interest.
Yeah, I think
Because
that's
I
I'm
think
not
that would
applying
be
that at
fair.
all. I'm applying what I observed.
Yeah, because I think that's a really
I mean,
big one.
I'm stating what I saw,
Yeah.
right? And that was a long meeting to sit through. That was very long. I think we might set a record. And it probably should have gone on longer, right? Like, there was we left an issue on the table at the end of the meeting that really needed resolved, but we stopped. And I can see why we stopped, but I was prepared to continue that conversation into executive session because that's pressing, which is probably another element of this conversation we should have.
What was
I
it?
was just-
What issue was it?
It was going into executive session to discuss the approach to negotiations with the administration.
Oh.
And we didn't get to that, and that was on the docket for last night.
I was just gonna ask you about what happened to the point system for your nominating or selecting board members, because that seemed to,
It really, changed the dynamic.
well, yeah, I mean, it gives more opportunity for that 2-2 scenario to not occur. It sort of opens
Actually,
it
I
up.
can tell you what happened there. I think if you go back to the minutes of June, I think Trustee Corker wanted to do it where it was a straight-up vote in the first place.
I think it's
And that was
illegal.
at her, I believe, I know the record states that, because I was like, okay,
And then
if
you
you want to go
voted on that?
with that vote.
I
And
think
then you
it's
voted to
illegal to
change it?
do it
Is
that
that
No,
way.
it was a consensus decision. It was
Just a
never a vote.
Right, it's illegal
I
to
think
do it that
he is
way.
right. We have
It's
been
illegal, you
advised
can't do it that way,
To
they
do
found
what?
out.
The point
To do the
system.
point system.
Point
Oh,
system.
okay.
Yeah, no, it's against the law, and so that last appointment, like I
Should we
suppose
void the
could have
last
been
appointment?
challenged, but I don't think it was challenged, I think it was, so I don't think.
You bring up an
anything-
interesting point. Does that mean we void the last appointment?
I wouldn't.
If it was illegal. I'm sorry, can you brief, I'm not familiar with this point system.
I did it once,
That would- okay.
and so my familiarity is my one experience with it. And I had a piece of paper, and I had 3 candidates that I had to select from, and I had to rate them 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
And so
Actually,
basically
had
what happened
5
is,
counts.
or 5, okay, it was
And
one.
you had to rate your top.
And was it 1, 2, 3 you rated? So you rated them 1, 2, 3, right? That's why I saw a 3, because I only put 3 numbers down. And so then that was tallied, and I think the lowest composite was first. So you didn't necessarily, I mean, I hate to say it, but you didn't necessarily get the top ranked person because you'd have offsets, and if you have significant differences of opinion or whatever, you're gonna, like, some people are gonna go vote 1 for one person, some people are gonna vote 3. So what may happen is there's a very good probability that the mean is going to be the one that gets the appointment, right? That's how that point system functioned. I think. I mean, I think we got a good person out of it and a good representative, but at the same time, you know, it's there's a bit of a flaw to it, and I can see probably why it's inappropriate or illegal. You got to like nominate and vote. And I'll say with the last appointment, I mean, I made my I nominated straight out of the gate, not straight out of the gate, but I made my nomination. There was a vote, and my nomination went down, so I felt beholden. There were still 2 trustees who had not made a nomination and chose not to. So I was like, Cammie made hers, I made mine. Ball's in the other people's court now, and you know they didn't make a nomination.
Well, wasn't that because 2 of you wanted one person and 2 of them wanted someone else? So you nominated and seconded,
I wanted.
nominated and seconded?
That's a really interesting way to present that.
I think that's what.
I voted for who I thought nominated the best possible candidate.
For yourself.
In my opinion, right? From what was presented to me,
Yeah.
from the questioning process, from
Right.
the data that I had received prior to, you know, as far as the support within the zone that she had received. And it's like, this seems like the best candidate,
Yeah, but
right?
it did to you, Rob, but it didn't seem like it to 2 other people. That's why they didn't nominate
democracy.
somebody else.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That's
saying.
democracy.
But it's also, each vote is an independent, straight-up vote.
Yeah.
So he could have voted for somebody on one vote, and then on another nomination, he could have voted for somebody else.
Yeah, if
Oh,
someone
you-
had
you
nominated,
had a
if somebody had
third person
nominated
that
Ellen,
nominated.
Yeah.
I might have voted for Ellen.
Sure.
If somebody had nominated Pamela, I might have voted for
Each
her,
one's separate and independent.
you know? But I felt I put my candidate forward who was, in my opinion, the best choice.
But probably, obviously, the person who seconded your vote felt that that was the best candidate. And then the person who nominated the other person who
Yeah.
got the second thought that was their best.
Yeah. That's the pain in the neck of 4. Like, I
Yeah.
do not want to leave this next meeting without 5, right? I really don't. I really don't. And I really think it's painful to imagine that we punt this thing to the county commissioners. You guys got that as a quote? That's like,
Painful.
it's a punt, right? And it's so irresponsible. I said that at the end of the vote that day.
But Rob, I have to disagree about irresponsible because the thing is, if you're not willing to compromise, that's because you feel so passionately about who you think is best. But if someone else is not willing to compromise, it's for the same reason. And if you just happen to see it differently, you have to respect they feel as passionately as you do. I mean, it's like there are people in this national election voting for someone I can't even comprehend.
I get that.
You know what I mean? But they feel as passionately. So I think that's just how the process has to work.
So then you're supportive of it going to county commissioners?
I prefer not, but I'm just saying, if he feels that passionately about one person, and somebody else feels as passionately about the person they prefer, I don't expect Rob to...
You know, I'll give you a little more background in what was presented to me and what the experience bases are. It's like, we're going into such uncharted territory as a governance board. Because to have the Teamsters Union show up at your meeting and then be pretty much, they're going to be representing the administration, and to backpedal out of that one could bring on, in my simple view, significant consequence, right? That consequence could be beyond any of our imaginations and scope.
You got a backpedal out of what? I didn't understand.
To say, if we rescind what was voted on as our process was to take on negotiation with the administration.
Well, you said you would discuss it in the fall.
No, there was a motion passed that we would negotiate with the administration. I wasn't there for that meeting. I missed that vote. And
Is that how it was? Was that, I mean, even if the wording was that way, was that what the
Yeah.
intent was?
That was the intent.
And that was-
Well, the board
Rob?
votes every year to negotiate with teachers, so I
Yeah.
think the board knew what they were doing, or should have known what they were doing to make a motion saying, because they make that same motion for teachers.
But you know what? I don't think they did because they've never done it for administrators. The reason I'm saying this is because
Yeah, I know
just
they
from the
have.
conversation that followed that meeting, it was like, well, it's going to be interesting to see, how this discussion comes down. But it certainly wasn't like it'll be interesting to see how this concrete negotiation goes.
I mean, that's how I took it out of the minutes, right? Like I said, I was not in attendance, it's the only meeting I've missed.
Whatever.
So Ron,
Yeah.
Barbara has a question.
Yeah, Barbara.
Sorry.
Since Teamsters have now, the gorilla has entered the room,
Yeah.
give us your whole take on that. What did you know
Well, my
and when did you
fear-
know it?
My
Now,
fear moving forward.
wait a
is-
minute,
What-
one more caveat.
Okay.
What did you know and when did you know it? And what did Dr. Holmes know and when?
What I knew was when those four guys came up to the microphone and I go, "Who are you fellas?" Right? Like, I didn't know who these fellas were. You know, it's like, I've never seen you guys before. Where are you from? That's when I knew.
But obviously, some other people knew the Teamsters were in the
I would
process.
imagine the entire administration knew.
The board clerk received a letter from the Teamsters, which was sent on immediately that same day to all of the trustees. So we knew at that point.
And when was that?
Oh, no, wait a minute. We knew, trustees, administration.
Both. The letter
So the
came-
administration knew nothing about this, and these Teamsters
I knew
appeared.
nothing about it, because
Okay.
I'm not a part of it. The board clerk received a letter, and she showed it to me, and it was sent to the trustees that same day.
Which was when?
Oh, I'd have to look back on my calendar, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
But I thought
Especially
you said,
rough
I thought
estimate.
you said it was August.
But I have a simple question.
Oh, I'm
Sure.
sorry.
What makes the Teamsters bad guys in this?
I'm not
Who
saying.
who said that the Teamsters are bad people? Who said unions are bad? I mean, you're talking like this is like,
No, let me.
oh my,
Can I
this,
let me finish my thought, okay? So I'm looking at them like they're really smart. I'm being respectful. Like, all of a sudden, how many school districts are there in America? How many unrepresented administrative groups are there in America? A lot. So this is like a virgin forest that hasn't had any trees chopped down yet. So, whoa, I got some lumber to work with here. I'm gonna start chopping some trees down. Like, we're like the second case in the nation, right? They did it in Montana. Or,
No, we're new for our area, but back east, there's a lot of administrative unions.
are they really? Okay, so I'm
I've
wrong
worked
in
in
that.
other districts where.
I'm flabbergasted by it, and it's like, okay,
Negotiate with administration.
these guys have a great opportunity to increase their dues-paying membership.
Yeah.
God bless them.
but I guess comments made after and what I just heard here automatically label the union and union representative in sort of a negative context. And I don't fully understand that. I mean, I've worked with a lot of unions in my life. I think they benefit oftentimes owners or the people that they're negotiating with, not just for. I think that they can bring positive things. I think it's a single voice. In this case, you don't have to negotiate with the VP and the principal and this and that. You can negotiate as a group. So I don't understand where kind of right off the bat we have this us and them or let's say any sort of negative connotation for that. I think that that's an absolute incorrect way to go into it.
I appreciate that, actually, because what is to come out of this process is some degree of uniformity, right? Like, there is no scale. What you just spoke to is
Well,
exactly the
I mean,
system.
for instance, in the construction business, if you're non-union, you've got to negotiate with every single one of your
That's
carpenters.
my point, is what we are living right now as far as what is perceived as an inequity between certified staff and administrative staff, as far as the way their contracts are written, is a result of precisely what you just portrayed. It is the fact that all of those deals were made independently and individually with every person in that role. So hopefully what comes out of this, what I've started actually to tick on a little bit, even though I did get quoted on saying it was out of my pay grade, is working with the superintendent to at least develop some type of schedule of salary for all administrative employees, so there at least exists a point of bargaining or negotiating that you walk into it with. I think going into negotiation unprepared and just saying, hey, guys, you know, the Teamsters are pros. It's like, I think I want to be prepared to go into conversation with them. I volunteered to go into conversation with them last night. I said to Trustee Corker and myself, I suggested we be the representatives of the board. Trustee Bustos, Trustee Benyon, they have kids, they have full-time jobs, it would be very difficult for them to spend 4 days in the process or 3 days as it does with BCEA. So, I'm actually not, just to clear you up, I'm not afraid of it at all. I actually have met all the representatives who were at the meetings both times, had nice conversations with them afterwards. They're pros, they know what they're doing. I actually stand to learn something from them, probably, right? So, hopefully that answers my stance there.
Hey, this brings a question in my mind though, because you know how you said you already started working with the administrator to develop some kind of administrative salary scale, and so that then you can talk to the Teamsters, but I'm just.
Or the administration, whoever we're negotiating with,
I was
right?
gonna say, because isn't that like already a kind of a conflict? Like, I'm just trying to think, like, isn't your role supposed to be separate? You're supposed to be the person who,
Your question's a little vague.
I
Be a
know,
little more
because I'm
direct.
trying to figure it out.
He's worked with me, he's looked at some drafts that I've made,
Yeah,
but not the rest of the administration.
no,
It's very
no.
clear by statute that I have to be separate from them. And
Yeah,
so-
see, the framework is that,
And let me tell you, it's not easy when you can't just
Yeah.
pick up the phone and ask your HR people to help you with
Yeah.
stuff.
See-
You gotta go ferret it out yourself, but
that's my
where we
vision
are.
of the landscape, is that Gwen Carroll serves at the pleasure of the board. She is our sole employee. Brian, it was offered last night, Brian was supposed to be on our team for negotiation. I said, no, Brian is the administrative staff. He should be on with the administration in this process. This is a responsibility of us. We're in that situation. Gwen Carroll is our paid employee to manage and help us with that process.
Gretchen has it.
I have
Yes,
a couple questions.
Go ahead.
First, I just want to say that I think everybody in the whole valley needs to remember that these are volunteer positions. And I just think that everybody that is on the board is a volunteer. They're not, that's super important to remember. Because otherwise we would have, I've talked to lots of parents. I have children, 3 children have been all through the Blaine County Wood River school system. 2 are now in high school, 1 is in college. And so I've talked to lots of people recently about what's going on. And my questions are this. So the volunteer is key, because I've said to lots of people, why don't you run? Get on the school board. Myself also, and I keep thinking when my youngest is out of high school, maybe, but it's something big to bite off. So I really respect that. 2, you're at a deadlock with this. I'm not sure. I have my own opinion about the candidates. Everybody has an opinion about the candidates, it seems like. And it seems like everybody's pretty locked at 2 and 2. So I'm not sure how that's going to change. I don't say anybody's opinions are really going to change, because I think the candidates are just the differences are very wide. And this is my last part, everybody is focusing on what's going on with the contracts with the administration. And I think that everybody that reads the paper or has spoken to anyone would love to see some transparency in that. I think we all want to know what the heck's going on, because we want our teachers paid more if our administration is being paid exponentially more. There needs to be a balance there. But my concern is, what about everything else that's going on in the district? Are we going to spend the next, however long talking about contracts? There's just bigger fish to fry. I have 2 in high school right now, and
I have 2 as well.
And I have 2 in high school that started here in kindergarten, and I know lots of teachers, as lots of parents in this room do, and I just think that there's a lot of other things going on in our district that is beyond this. This is enormously important, and don't get me wrong, at some point do we maybe think about getting an outside person that we pay to analyze the situation, or it clearly needs to be dealt with. I think what's happened is we're having it's kind of getting modified. We have people looking at it and doing this, and it's up behind closed doors, and that's just really not working anymore. It just doesn't seem that's making anybody happy.
When you say this, do you mean
I do mean contracts.
No, when the negotiations start, it's required by law to be an open meeting.
Well, I understand open meeting, but I do, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been some decisions that have been made that the people in our county and valley maybe are surprised by how those contracts ended up and where they stand today, and maybe that we do need to just lay it out there and find out what needs to be changed. Because I'm not saying this year, clearly we're in it and people have their contracts, but moving forward, it's a huge problem. And I just don't think that, it seems that every parent, teacher that I have spoken with is concerned. So if that is a grumbling, it's not gonna go away, I think, and it may, I have no opinion if it's right or wrong. None, zero, I have no idea. But I do think it's like a bad cancer right now. And there's too much else going on that needs to be addressed in the Blaine County school system. So this is the big elephant in the room, let's get it addressed.
No, and that would, two things, is one, first of all, that's what negotiations with the administrators would do, is, it, just as teachers have a salary schedule and they have a master agreement that says what holidays they get paid for, what ones they don't, when they get extra pay for after-hour stuff, you know, it outlines everything, and their sick leave, everything. That would be what negotiations with the administrators would do. It would set that same thing. Here's their salary schedule, here's their master contract, here's the parameters of their work.
Okay, and so I'm sorry to interrupt, but so I understand that with teachers, but is that also, that's privy to the administration and everything, all the package that they get? Are we also aware of that, and is that subject to change down the road?
It's subject to the negotiations.
Absolutely.
If we could ever get,
Absolutely.
if we could ever get to the table.
That's the process.
Yeah.
Right.
I also want to say last night about a couple of things that happened at the board meeting that were refreshing to me, because I would like to talk about kids and how they're doing. We did talk about, we had an update on our outcome data from last year, some successes, some areas that we need to improve in, talked about what's happening there, talked about a literacy plan. Bellevue talked about what's going on at their school. So there were some, that's part of the reason why we were so late, was those things
Which I was
took a
okay
lot
with
of
that.
time
I
too.
mean, we could probably shorten the presentation things down a little bit, that would be
But
great.
there were some.
But there was great information and great conversation about good stuff, right?
Good.
It was really, it was good.
I have two things. First
Oh,
of
I'm
all,
sorry.
to address something that you just said, I was told the last time I was at this meeting by Superintendent Holmes that there were, I think the term was small pockets of morale issues in the district, not an overall morale problem. That was, other people were here, I think, is that a reasonable quote? Okay, so according to Superintendent Holmes, there's no morale problem, serious morale problem in the district. I happen to disagree with that dramatically, but the superintendent doesn't. All right, and part of my point was that if you don't recognize that as a problem, how are you ever going to fix it? That's point one.
And the foundation for your belief of a strong morale problem is based upon what?
Numerous conversations with teachers across the district, numerous conversations.
Have you been inside of a school or been in the schools to experience or witness the day-to-day activity within the schools?
Nope, I've talked to
The morale?
teachers only outside of the four walls here, in Atkinson's, at the post office, socially, whatever. I know numerous teachers, I've been involved with numerous teachers, and that's my feeling.
Yeah,
But that's
just
point
curious.
one. That's
Curious.
point one. Point two, back to the Teamsters. Has the board tried to figure out what has caused the administrators beneath the superintendent level to feel that they need to go and bring in the Teamsters to negotiate? That's a pretty radical change. Something has occurred to change the atmosphere in this district to cause the administrators the feeling that they need to bring in outside council representation that they never felt that they had to do before to do that. And has the board done anything at all to investigate what caused this major seismic change?
To answer your question, I missed the meeting when this whole negotiation question was brought up. I wasn't there. I reviewed the minutes. I'm not totally accurate in my memory bank of exactly what was transcribed and delivered to me, but I can give you kind of cliff notes of it. And I believe the conversation from the board table contained the language that administration, because we were in the midst of trying to pare the budget down. And I said in the meeting I'll get into that part a little bit later if I have time. But the work done within the entire team of the school district last year was remarkable in the sense of the savings that were incurred from what was actually budgeted on a bottom line dollar. I think the savings were expected to be somewhere in the vicinity of 500,000, and we ended up through the processes, and I have some real overview sheets with me, we saved 4.5 million, which was really a significant effort on the part of the people who are in the entire makeup of the district. That's a big deal in my book.
But my question
So I'm
wasn't
going to get to
that.
your question. I
Okay.
just wanted to state that because that's an important thing to put out there. And so at this meeting, I think one of my colleagues, because it goes to budget, it goes to those things, because we're trying to trim some costs. And I think one of my colleagues made a comment that the administration needs to feel the pain and that there would be some percentage of reduction for them and some removal of benefits. And I think that came across pretty quickly without a whole lot of, that was a pretty good shotgun blast to receive in a public forum. And I think that's probably the reaction that the administration had to that comment because that, but I'm here saying that one out because I'm not positive.
Experience tells me, and I've been through this, I've owned a company that's had unions try to organize. And experience tells me that successful organization occurs when the people that are being organized don't trust those above them. Okay? And I think that if you read stuff in this, and so my question is A, what are their reasons? I'm not trying to say that's their reasons. I'm saying that experience tells me that oftentimes that's a reason. B, have you tried to get to the root cause analysis here to find out why this occurred so that you can have, moving forward, more positive conversations and not us and them type of conversations, which are oftentimes how these things start rolling out. So what's been the root cause analysis?
Rob?
Jean has been trying to ask a question, and then Penny is next, so.
I'll finish it.
I can explain.
So superficially,
Sir, I
you
can
know, some
explain to you what
conversations with
happened.
administration, I feel I have a decent relationship with most administrative people. I don't feel my role is to be adversarial. I think my role is to be collaborative. And I think there's some sense of adversarialism between key administrators and some members of the board. I feel that that's somewhat prevalent. In the meeting last night, I suggested that we do an interest-based bargaining approach to this negotiation, which is not a conventional collective bargaining, us and them, so that we create sort of an atmosphere of conversation, because this was stated 2 meetings ago. I think one of the trustees and one of the key administrators did have an exchange that was definitely about lack of trust for each other and hard feelings. So that's obvious, I get that. So we need to put ourselves in a position where we work to create communication and then hopefully develop trust. That's my view of it. I view this negotiation as an opportunity for that.
Jean had the next question.
Okay.
Sometime in June, Dr. Holmes, I talked to you and Director of Curriculum, Angie Martinez, about what's next now that we no longer implement International Baccalaureate. And I remember that you told me that sometime in the fall, the school board would receive some proposal from a committee.
Yep.
Would you care to, or you, Trustee Clayton, tell us where we at in the process?
It is on the docket for November for a presentation from that committee on their recommendations for a secondary course of study, and then action in December.
Thank you.
Penny, or no, who was the next? I'm sorry, I lost track. Yeah, Penny.
I think I made a few notes here, and the conversation has gone into 6 different ways, so I'll try to come back to what I was trying to ask a question about. But I too feel, no, I'm going to say that differently. I too am aware of a morale issue at the school district. within the school buildings. I have 3 children. 1 has graduated and is in college, 2 is still in high school. I spend a great deal of time at the high school because I'm a volunteer there. I speak to teachers. I speak to parents. I speak to regular community members. And the thing that has me concerned is I get phone calls from people who work for the schools who say, Penny, I trust you, but I don't feel comfortable saying what I'm about to tell you. I could lose my job. So to say there is not a morale issue is either just pretending it doesn't exist, or there is an actual unawareness on behalf of the board and or administration. I am confident that I could bring in a great number of people that could confirm what I'm telling you. And they are afraid. They feel they'll get reprimanded. Not only do they feel that, they have seen it. They've seen other people speak up, and they get those people get reprimanded by their supervisors. And that comes from somewhere. It may not be your intention, but it's real, and it needs to be recognized, and it needs to be addressed.
Well,
Sorry, let me just finish. And the trust issue is very significant. It is significant. And we can't have a fully functioning system if we have a trust issue. It's just not possible. My greatest hope is that you guys will select a board member, a 5th board member, truly, who is impartial, who is not predisposed to siding with, let's just say it right, siding with the girls or the boys, because that's what it is at this point, right? So if we can find somebody who can look at it from above and not be tainted and not be artificial about it, I'm so hopeful that person will become
So are you
on board.
saying the current makeup is artificial and tainted? And
No,
that's the makeup of where we
sorry,
are?
Thank you to clarify that. No, I hope that you will be able to select a 5th member of your board who will be an authentic, impartial voice on that board.
And Penny, if I could just speak, because since I have arrived 2.5 years ago, you have told me that same thing over and over,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard you. And I have been sensitive and looking for that. I do know of a few situations when I first arrived where there were administrators that people were afraid to express their opinion to. I think by and large that is gone. Without getting into HR things that'll get me in serious trouble, I think by and large that is gone. Sure. I do know there are still, and I was described last night as having a cozy relationship with the administrators, and I do think I have a good relationship with them. I do think I have a good relationship with the vast majority of the teachers. I know there are some teachers who aren't happy with me, and that's probably the way it's going to be with whoever's in that chair. Because if you're making everybody happy, you're obviously not accomplishing very much, type of thing. But I do have a good relationship with the vast majority of the staff. The only thing that I am aware of now is staff who are concerned about expressing their point of view because of board retaliation. And we did have to get an attorney engaged in this because there was some denying of First Amendment rights. And as an employee, what you do on your own time is your business. You have a right to align yourself behind various candidates and stuff like that. So I'm being very honest with you. That's what I see right now, and that's where I see the concerns and about what's happening. But in the schools with teachers and administrators and classified and everybody working together, by and large, it is much more collaborative, much more collegial than it was 2.5 years ago.
So to paraphrase
I
you,
just
you
feel like
believe
you
that there
disagree.
still
Yeah.
are
Okay,
only
disagree.
isolated pockets of people having morale problems, to
Having
paraphrase
morale
you.
in their day-to-day work issues.
And I couldn't disagree with you more.
You know what, Rob?
Can I just-
And actually, our survey showed it improved this last year.
One thing I would like to say as far as you seem like a solution guy, like you want to see some solutions, which I appreciate. And we had like a snippet of an instance of something good last night. It was the first time we had a member of the certified staff sit as a consultant at the board table. We had an issue on literacy. Lo and behold, it happens that this particular individual is a first grade reading specialist, and this whole intervention plan is designed from K through 3, right? So it's not the perfect solution, Jimmy, and I heard you in your public comment, and I can say that now.
No, and I'm certainly glad to hear that.
We had somebody there that was actually a voice, and I got to get to my point. My point was, like, I asked the person, put her on the spot, right? Like, what do you think? And she was nervous, right? And so your point's taken to a degree, because it's like, okay, now I see and sense she's nervous in giving a response to a legitimate question that she's a pro at, from a guy who's not a pro, and she did pretty well, right? And that's like, okay, that's just like a little bit, but that's a big little bit,
Sure.
right? That's a big little bit from what I'm hearing in this conversation.
I agree with you, but back to my original point is, you can't fix a problem until you recognize the problem. As I stated to you last time, and to you, not behind anybody's back, that if you don't recognize the problem, therefore you can't fix it, you have a bigger problem because the person who you think should fix problems doesn't recognize the problem. And remember what we said, she works for you, you don't work for her.
I understand that.
Okay, so Jamie's trying to
I
ask
just have a comment on the morale issue, because you made a comment that it's like, have you been in our schools? Where do you see it? Because we as teachers are committed to kids. You're not gonna see it in our schools, because we come here every day to serve the kids of this community.
That's good.
Absolutely, I can't agree more with
And,
that.
you know,
I agree with
and you
that.
just come
That's
watch
great.
us.
You
We
can't
do
see
our
it in the
job,
school.
and that's not where you're gonna see it. And
No.
it kind of felt like you were saying, what do you mean, I don't see it? You know, I have to agree that the morale
I
issues
guess I
that are,
get too far ahead of myself, because
are
morale
about-
affects work product. Like, if
Not-
morale is an issue, and at some
Can I
point.
finish?
Well, I can-
It will, yeah, I'm sorry.
Please, I'm sorry, because this is hard
Yeah.
for me.
Go ahead,
I
please,
need
please.
you to know
Okay.
that when you step out and you do make public comment and you do put yourself in that position, it is not easy. It's, you're not gonna see the morale issue when we're here serving kids. But there is a trust issue, and it's real, and it needs to be addressed.
Hey, Rob, I just want to comment that I have unbeknownst to, I have not had a conversation with people here about what I'm saying tonight, and I think, I love Wood River. I love the elementary schools, I love the middles, I love it all. I am the biggest supporter of public school in our valley. I think these teachers are the best. I mean, I think they're as good as they get, and they would retire or quit their job before they would compromise their classroom. So I think actually seeing anything going on in the classroom or in the school, I don't ever see it. I just can't be thankful enough that they're here. But what I do hear, you know, we have a business in town, and so we chat all day long with people, and I do hear a lot that teachers are frustrated and they're bummed, and that's just the worst thing a parent can hear, because they've got my kid all day long and they're raising my child far more than I am, and there are teachers in this room that have done that. And I feel it grinding. I think almost every teacher I talk to is struggling in some way. And I had a recent conversation with a teacher that I admire enormously, and we were talking about something we agree about passionately, and she off the record made a comment that was so upsetting because she felt like her hands were tied in something she believed in and wanted to move forward. And I know that's very vague, because I certainly wouldn't oust her, but it was heartbreaking to me, because she's dedicated her life to this, and she cannot move forward for fear of retaliation from someone above her. And I That is why I'm here tonight, and I don't have an axe to grind. I am just
That's great.
stating this to you because it is so concerning to me. Like,
And this
so
actually is great
concerning.
to hear, because this goes to the pressing issue that I presented, right? And the pressing issue I presented is actually we need to fill a fifth seat, as we just discussed. And if I have somebody who actually is interested in filling that seat, who represented the teachers in negotiations, is somebody that I heard through public comment, lauded by her colleagues in the teaching thing. And if there was someone representative of teachers in general who was willing to step into a role on the board, that might go a long ways to developing some trust.
and I
Right.
do hear you. I just heard both
Yeah.
sides.
But you know what, here, I gotta interrupt because here's
Go
the
ahead, because
deal.
I'm just putting pieces
Wait, Kate,
together
before
here.
you go, I
Oh,
just
I'm
want to
so
say, I am also aware that it's very divided. And I think all the candidates have great qualities and they all have concerns from the other side. And I see it all. I don't know the answer, but I'm just saying that, I mean, I don't see one candidate, I see why the two sides love their sides, but I also see why the other sides don't. So
Yeah.
I'm not here to say one's better, I just don't know.
I'd love
But
to hear
anyway,
what
sorry,
you're gonna
Kate,
say.
go on.
It's okay, go ahead.
No, please.
Go ahead, Kate.
I have a pretty quick comment that should have a pretty quick answer. Rob, our district has a situation where a longtime former trustee went during the matter of just a couple of weeks, less than 2 months for certain, from being a trustee overseeing the district to being an employee of the district. And the opportunity for conflict of interest, serious conflict of interest, are obvious in that situation. I'm not saying there is conflict of interest, but there's the opportunity. What do you feel is the appropriate amount of time of separation between when a trustee resigns to when that trustee becomes eligible to apply for a job with the school district?
Given the scarcity of good-paying jobs within this valley, I think that that's something to really consider, right? Like if someone has that role, has that institutional knowledge, and is of value and meritorious for the position, why should I discriminate against them for that job? At the same time, I hear what you're saying as far as conflict, because maybe they greased the wheel while they were in the role as a trustee during that time period. But I think as currently being in a job search and knowing what's available here, an opportunity came along, I would definitely be looking for opportunities.
Well, that's exactly why I asked the question.
It's very
Exactly
hard.
why I asked
There's
it.
policy
I wanted
about
to
that.
get on record kind of how you felt like
I think that's
about
hard,
that.
you know? And so if someone needed a good job and was qualified and capable, take the person for what the person's worth, and hopefully they can be hired on their merit, right? It's like reverse discrimination.
But you understand how someone's role as trustee overseeing budgets, overseeing the supervisor, to being employed by that supervisor and being paid by those budgets is an obvious chance for a conflict of interest.
I do see that, but I also look at the history of the budget over the last 6 years and the way that thing's been run down into the ground, and that's been allowed, and like, okay, wow, crazy. You know, it's like, I believe now there's a high degree of fiscal responsibility within the district, because if we're showing a net positive versus a net negative, that to me speaks clear good business, right? That's good business. And I don't
I'm
know.
not sure that that's always a sign of good business, because it depends on how you get there. I don't think it's as black and white as we were in the red and we're in the
I can
black.
explain how we got there.
But I'm just saying,
I know.
your blanket statement, I don't accept.
Then I need to give you a little more background and depth. Here's the depth of that statement. Was this swing basically was, I'm going to say what I did as a trustee and as a fiduciary. I came into my role. I went through my first budget hearing. Presented on the wall. General fund balance 2014-15, X. General fund balance projected 2015-16, Y. Bigger, better, bigger, better, bigger, worse. Bigger, better. Okay. Oh, drawdown. Not cool. We need to fix that. We can't do it now because this wheel's already rolling. Okay? Administration. Please do your best to tighten your belt and make things work within what you're doing and get this thing at least as close to even as you can. Administration, teachers, classified, all the people within the district, all of the employees sucked it up and made that thing float to the black. That was before any of
Oh,
that.
not quite, we were 500,000 over.
We were 500, okay.
We
But
were
went
2
from-
million and a half.
It was a $4 million swing, okay? And so
We were close.
that was done through simply diligence and hard work with no governance dictating, you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have this.
What do you mean?
And that's what I'm applauding right now.
I'm
It's like
butting in, but
So
we need
just-
to know you can't have this, you can't have that.
budget process.
I just wanna-
This didn't come through a budget process, this was purely a request.
This was last year.
This was last year.
So I just want to, I want to get a summary, Rob. So in your opinion, there doesn't need to be any separation in time between a trustee's resignation and,
And hire.
I can't give you a best practice.
Who's
I would
doing the
need to
hire?
look at
It was-
that
it was
and do some
10 years
research.
ago.
To give you an honest answer, that's a fair question, but I'm not gonna sit here and go, I think it should be 18 months. No, I think it should be 3 years. I don't know what best practices are. I'm not an expert on that division of duty, so I couldn't give you that answer.
But-
Should there be a period of time? Yeah, I
But
mean,
hearing from you, you don't see any problem with what's occurred, and you don't see any problem with that occurring in the future. That's what you said.
conceivably not,
Okay.
because I'm not gonna discriminate.
I'll
against
accept that
individual-
answer. I
Yeah.
just want to know what the
Yeah.
answer is.
That's all.
my
That's
answer.
good.
The Qualified person,
So I think we
hire
should,
them.
I know you said you have to go pick up kids and I have to, and I mean, you can go as long as you want.
I can give it like
but
five- I
I just
can give
wanted
it-
to suggest
I can
maybe
give this
one or
till
two more
20 of.
questions.
I can go till 20 of,
Rob?
Rob, can I say
and then the
something?
pool's getting cold.
You know what, I just wanted to say one thing, because you want Irene Healy as the trustee, you can't conceive of why somebody else doesn't want it, but there are, you know, she was an.
Well, I'm gonna start conceiving because I would like this thing to
But there-
happen.
There were some she was an incredible science teacher, like my kids were lucky to have her, she was amazing, and she's participated and but she has also taken absolutely the same stance you took on a couple of really important issues that other
What
trustees
stance is that?
disagree. You know, when she, well, I'll talk to you later about it if you want. But
No, share now, it's public.
But you only have 5 minutes. The whole point I wanted to make was that, there are legitimate reasons, why other trustees wouldn't want to consider her. It's like, we know Pam's gone to all the meetings, and Pam has a pretty, I don't know, one kind of an approach. And then Irene is on the other extreme, and she has this other extreme approach.
Mhm.
And so you wouldn't vote for Pam, nor would I expect the other trustees to vote for Irene, because it's too distinct. But
Okay.
all I'm asking you.
I'm hearing what you're saying.
I'm asking you, I'm begging you to try to put a little cordiality or whatever, congeniality back into
But
the
you said it
board
occurred.
process itself, because sometimes you attack Liz Schwartle. I don't think you care for her. That's the public perception now. I don't think you care for her points of view, and that's okay. But what I'm saying is, in public, you attack her, and it's so hard to watch sometimes because it looks so rude, and I'm just asking you at the next meeting, if you disagree vehemently, just take a pause and think about public persona. Because I would imagine it upsets her.
I did have one
I've
instance
never-
of that. I got scolded in the
I've never
newspaper.
spoken with her.
I
I
remember
would
that.
just assume she feels that way.
More than
But
that.
I've seen it, and it makes me
I would say
uncomfortable.
less.
So that's just a
Appreciate that.
request.
Personally, I feel I'm actually very cordial with her at the meetings, and
I
actually,
don't know, just, that's all.
I did have an instance of when we had a debate on ethics, because I feel very strongly on ethics,
I don't know.
that we,
Anyway, I've seen it.
and we actually got it voted through last night, which I was glad.
Where, whatever.
She made a proposal, and her proposal was good, and we actually now have a code of ethics, which is great.
Rob?
Yes,
I return to fiscal matters
yes.
for a minute. You were talking about all the budgets and the savings and this and that.
Yeah.
Last night at the board meeting, the board passed another batch of policies. There were seven or eight or something in there. A big bunch lumped together. Last June, also, same thing that's been happening. A big batch of policies all lumped together. Let's pass them all, part of the agenda, blah, blah, blah. Get it out there. My question to you is, are you aware of all of the details of those policies? If so, why in June did you vote to approve a policy which gives the superintendent authority to authorize to spend $25,000 at a whack? Contracts and services, this is policy number 850, and 850.6.
Would you like an
20
answer?
Wait a minute. So $25,000, I understand that a CEO should have discretion. But I think 25,000 is an awful lot because coincidentally, as soon as that was passed on the 14th of June, work started by a Boise law firm on revisions for an administration retirement plan which benefits only 20 administrators. In the month of July, the district spent $25,338 on revisions, 71 hours of attorney time from a Boise firm, and Amanda said it's not over. So why would you authorize the superintendent full power to
Up to
do anything
$25,000.
up to $25,000?
Can I answer you?
Okay.
My answer would be that my previous job within the community here was as the executive director of Sun Valley Ski Education Foundation. And we had a policy where I was authorized to spend up to $10,000 without board approval. Our annual budget was $3 million. So when I look and proportional that out, if there are things needed within the district that need to be done without board authorization, if I'm good to $10,000 within a $3 million company, I can see her being good to $25,000 in a $55 million company. I think that's not out of reach in my personal opinion. I think that that's somewhat on the same scale, and I think she should be capable of making those decisions.
And actually, that's state statute, so even when
If you ask me where I came from, that's where I'm coming from.
when we were a district that had no financial policies, which was not a good situation to be in, it was still state statute, so I still have that authority even prior to.
State statute says the superintendent can spend $25,000 without telling the board.
Yes, I can spend up to 25, actually 24,999. When it reaches
So the whole amount you
25,000.
spent on that one lawyer? So you
Yeah.
just approved it, which I'm okay with you just approving it when you just said the numbers for the budget.
Yeah.
But the money was all spent in one area? That your
No,
unapproved money, just,
They can do
No.
any contract.
I know.
Any contract.
No, but it was
And
spent.
it's not just
there was a-
once per year, it's any
How much was
contract.
how much was the bill supposed to be?
$25,338, which goes over the $25,000 limit. So, was any approval sought from the board?
It's not a contract, it's like all of our attorney things that are.
Well,
So I'm not familiar with this, but didn't all the board pass these things that you're talking about?
They
So it
did.
wasn't just Rob?
No,
It was
but
the
I'm
whole
asking,
board.
since Rob voted for it, I'm asking why he voted for it.
Oh, okay, but it was the whole board that
Yeah.
passed it. So
Then you gotta check on it. It's okay, I don't have a problem.
Can I just say something about the morale issue?
Yes.
I have 2 young children anyway. I haven't been in this whole school thing for very long, so honestly, I really haven't paid much attention to that, which is why I came to the meeting. But I've heard a fair bit of grumbling since being in the schools and being friends with various teachers and things like that, and it just feels to me like behind the teachers is almost like this big whip that's like, teach, 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 and don't take a breath because God forbid you actually take a breath during the day, and it just, I have a kindergarten teacher friend that was about ready to have a nervous breakdown last year because she's like, I can't cram any more information into these small brains. They are not ready for this much information. First grade teachers that are saying, it's so terrible, kids just aren't allowed to play anymore. Like, what happened to the 3rd recess? When I was in school at Hemingway, there was 3 recesses for young children. Where's the 3rd recess? It's just like cramming information into them. Last year we went for a walk from here to the river to look at tracks in the snow, and all I heard was, don't play in the snow, get out of the snow, don't throw snowballs, get out of the snow, come on. And I was like, would you listen to yourself? These children are 6. And it was like, well, yeah, we only have 45 minutes to get to the river and look for weasel tracks and back to
Oh
the
boy,
school.
this is getting good. This is good. Now we're good here. I'm warning.
But it's just like, I just have this feeling of like, we only have 45 minutes, we gotta get this done. We got math to learn after this.
It was hard.
And it was super hard.
And
And
you
it's
feel
almost
that
like,
you're completely pegged into a hole to do that.
I feel like I'm running all day long.
totally, that's what it looks
I
like to me.
am running all day long.
Well, we need to have this conversation, okay?
That's what
Thank
it
you
looks
for
like to
saying
me.
that.
And the testing
I'm
is a
good
big
with
deal
that.
too. This testing that the kids are always doing, and it's almost like the teachers say, yeah, I know, it's really stupid, but we have to do it because we've been told we have to do it. But nobody even agrees with it.
There's a lot of.
You would,
Like, why
I mean,
Absolutely.
Why are we
There's so
doing
much
it?
of that.
Why are we doing it? You know, and this is a democracy. People say, well, we have to.
You
Well, where does it
actually,
live?
Pamela educated me last night.
Isn't some of
You
that
as
state
parents, and we provide the
So,
forms.
I mean, it's like.
You may
well,
opt
my school
out.
board.
They
Right,
can't.
state mandated. It's not
Okay, you go there because you're the pro.
The
There's tests
state
we have
has
to do.
requirements, and even for graduation, there are tests that you have
It's
to
state
take.
mandated.
Do we like them?
Oh,
No.
that's my last point, actually.
But it is.
And it is the federal government?
No,
It
Some
is
of
not
the
the
state
federal
government.
government.
Some
This
of
is
it
not the
no.
democracy.
Well,
Like,
what's the difference between taking the test and performance? Because my other concern, which I have issues with,
Yeah.
having all this
I
pressure
have
with
something I want to
performance.
say
We
to
have,
this as well.
we have
Then
an
I gotta
enormous
go.
population at the high
We
school
gotta go
of
someplace.
kids that they're coming from places, it's our only public school in this valley and in the county, and they're not really in a position, they're just trying to keep their head above water. And my feeling is, why are we not getting staff in there that can really nurture those freshmen and say, okay, let's think about going to a community college. What do you need to do to just get there? You have parents that aren't speaking English. Why are we not trying to make every scenario the best for that 4 years? I feel like it's like, yeah, the kids that, and I have some children, I mean, I am fortunate, well, my children are those high-achieving children, but it's easy for them. They've got 2 parents and they've got, we provide, and I just feel like we've got this underbelly going on that is not being supported at all, and that's my concern. So these kids are supposed to be getting these huge test scores, and the teachers are feeling it, and I don't understand that. I don't understand that.
I want to speak to this one.
Okay,
Because
I
I did a little
it kills
research,
me.
I actually called up the Office of Education for the state of Connecticut today to get some answers, because I really wanted to speak to this. Because I keep reading in the papers how, in the comment sections, because I really do love the online version of the Intermountain Express, you can put that in the comments too. It's really something. And it gives you it's very interesting. And constantly I'm reading about how can we pay so much money and have such poor performance on the SAT? Our SAT scores rank so poorly within the whole realm of the United States. We're the worst. What is going on here?
We're the worst is Idaho, is what you're saying.
Idaho is one of 3 states out of 50 that requires every junior to take the SAT, regardless of anything. The entire spectrum takes that test. When you rank that with every other state, the other 47 that don't require that, you have a huge selective process there just by choice, right? Like, you're having people take that test, as we saw in the data, that should not be probably taking that test. And I'm not disparaging.
Absolutely. I don't know if
Not in a
it's
disparaging
required.
way, but that is going to definitely drive us in our rankings very,
Do we
very
not get
low.
less money
It's
because
the
I
truth.
think the
Yes.
rankings.
Yes.
It's
To
required.
It's required to graduate.
from high school.
The state of Idaho
the state of
requires it.
Idaho.
Okay,
People
well, my
need-
son graduated, he didn't take the SAT, and it happened 2 years ago.
Neither did
So
mine.
it must- Yours didn't
You
either,
took
right?
the
Not
No, I don't think
Let me
it's-
tell you
They
what's
take
already
ACTs?
You
Yeah.
have
No,
They took
have to.
ACTs.
Yes.
So do they allow you to take ACTs or SATs?
Yes.
So
Okay.
there's you have to take a test that's accepted
Right.
less and
college-
less
a
anymore,
college
actually
entrance
less and
exam.
less.
Let's call it a
For college acceptance.
You take the
Let me
right.
just go through real fast the tests.
People need to understand this.
I know, I
It's
want to
like-
Let me
understand.
go through
Yeah.
the tests that were
It's important.
reported last night. Every single one of them that was reported is required by the state.
I understand
The
that.
IRI is required by the state. Should we be monitoring student fluency? Yeah. Is that the best test? Probably not, but it's what it is.
Yeah, if the teacher in the classroom doesn't know that their child can't read, they should be fired. I'm sorry. You know?
So
teachers
tests are not new. It's just
A small
in the
measure.
past, I, as a first grade teacher, developed my own test, used my own test. The teacher down the hall had her test, developed her own test. What's happened is they become standardized, and we now have a requirement. I mean, I always made sure I knew if my kids were reading and what they could do as a reader. So saying testing is new is not, but those tests, the standardization of them and the requiring of them, and I think that's part of the pressure that people feel is the whole culture of our whole country around that. Okay, so we reported on the IRI.
But is the pressure coming from you?
Well,
because there are two.
Wait, let me finish. The IRI is required. We also reported on star reading and math. we are required to do a screener 3 times a year. We have a choice among a couple different screeners, but we're required to do a screener 3 times a year. We reported on ISAT, that's required. We reported on Access, that's an assessment for the kids who are learning English, that is required. Now with the new teacher evaluation, it is required that we have common assessments across the district that factor into that teacher evaluation. So if a kid graduates or a kid completes Algebra 1 at Cary or Wood River Middle School or Wood River High School, the end of course exam is the same. So we can say regardless of what school they were in, they at least met this minimum standard. It's a lot, but it is, I think part of it is also as adults putting on the mentality of, oh my gosh, a test, because kids take their cues from us. If it is an assessment that is just helping me as the teacher know what I need to do with you next, and I treat it like that, and I treat it like, okay, now we know you're here, next time we're going to try to move to here, and here's what we're going to do to move you, they'll be fine with it. If we come in and go, oh my gosh, this is real important, do your very best, then they're going to be, oh my
Yeah, but
gosh.
when your child is going to school in Spanish, 80% Spanish, 20% English, and they're being given tests in English, and they're failing the tests over and over, and they're being singled out as the little child in the class that can't speak, that can't read English. Because they are going to school in Spanish. Yeah, you know, even if the parent's not, oh my gosh, the child must feel that.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
By the way, a lot of this genesis for this, what I would call over-testing, came from No Child Left Behind.
That started in
True.
2002.
Can I ask what
Okay,
the
No
school's
Child Left
policy is
Behind.
on that?
Right, yeah.
Like,
Meant no teaching.
how important are the test scores to the school?
Thanks,
Meaning, like if, for example, what is the trickle down that the administration gives to the teachers if the teacher has a classroom, she's an awesome teacher, and her kids are not testing as well for whatever the dynamic of that class? What is the support, or what do you
How
tell
do we
that
respond
teacher?
to that?
Yeah, like, my impression is that that teacher, the classroom's test scores are not where they're supposed to be. Their hammer is coming down on
Right.
that teacher, and that's where it's upsetting as a parent.
stressful.
Because
Yes,
I have had some of the greatest teachers, and they are feeling so stressed because their kids are not performing. And to me, that sounds like it's coming from the administration, and that is where I have a problem. And that is really the root of what I feel is going on with teachers and parents, is that we are tired of and I don't mean to overstep, I really, at all. But if the administration is putting the pressure on the teachers to get their class to perform, I have a problem with that.
Well, one of the
Well, let me answer her question.
Okay.
One of the things we did last night at the board table, because this is what we're also trying to do every day in our practice as colleagues and staff members, is to look at multiple data points. So one of the things that I have been concerned about since my arrival, I'll be very honest, I have pushed on this, is elementary reading. But I'm not concerned about elementary reading because of a score on an IRI. I'm concerned about elementary reading because of scores on IRI, STAR reading, ISAT. So there's multiple data points that are triangulated and saying, yeah, we're not performing at the level we need to perform. By the same token, last year our 6th grade math scores were not good on ISAT. I'm not jumping off of a bridge over 6th grade math scores right now because it's one data point. So what we try to do is say, let's look at multiple data points because that is going to give me a better idea of what's really going on rather than just coming and glued over one single score.
I don't understand why reading is, I mean, obviously reading is a big deal, but why is reading the biggest deal? I mean, math is important, reading is important, conflict resolution is important.
Play is important.
Play is important, activity is important.
Play is important for learning to read, actually.
It is, and it just seems like school is all about reading. Like, I literally don't hear anything else about, except for reading. Read.
At an elementary level, you will hear a lot about reading, because reading is very much a gatekeeper to being successful in school, because so much of school is about reading now. There's been studies forever. The Annie Casey Foundation is one of the big people in this area, that they talk about the students who aren't reading on or above grade level by the end of third grade, the trajectory is not always very pleasant. That's not causal, that's just correlational. But it is, at the elementary level, it is pretty much a gatekeeper for kids feeling successful at school.
My child hates school. He's in second grade. This is the first year. This is
I can
this
relate.
is the first year.
That's like the worst thing I could ever hear.
This year,
Just give him a
this year he
doctor.
actually likes school.
Okay.
This is the first year, second
You should
grade,
have
that he's
Kate
actually
Farm.
likes school. And he hates reading. He cries. He, you know, and it's like you look at the teachers and they're just like, you know, read. It's like, is there nothing else?
Yeah. And there are ways to make it fun, right, Jamie?
Yes.
You know, one of the unintended
Go in Jamie's class.
one of the unintended consequences of the metric of scores is that historically, oftentimes, the best teachers were willing to take on the students that were the furthest behind.
Oh, and they should.
And with this, you got to have them here. So if I start here and you start here, it's much easier for you to get to the metric than if I am willing to start lower. And so therefore, because of fear of not getting bonuses, not getting promoted, not being recognized, not being good across the country, and I'm not saying it's happening just here or it even is happening here, but one of the unintended consequences of this is that the great teachers that were willing to take on the low-performing kids, to maybe not get them to here, but they got them to here, which did a much better job than those who started here and got them to here, that we've lost that advantage because the unwillingness of teachers to put themselves at risk like that before. And this is an awful thing that has occurred, and it's occurred across the country.
Well, and the thing we value.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. And the thing we value the most, I hope at least we value the most, is having kids who are critical thinkers and problem solvers and really able to grapple with real world issues. That's a very hard thing to measure. So not Blaine County, but we as education in the whole country have often defaulted to the more easier measurement things, like just discrete facts and, you know,
Words per
how many
minute,
words
comfort.
per
Boom,
minute
boom,
you
boom,
could
boom.
read,
I get it.
type of thing.
I apologize. I have to go.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for doing this, Rob.
Thank y'all for speaking up.